Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us today to stay curious with these two excellent engineers of our shuttle program. Beside me is Maynette Smith. Welcome,
Hi.
Maynette.
Thank you.
And Mikey Haddad is on the other side there. And Mikey's been 4 or 5 months bringing us payloads of the shuttle. And we're grateful for that. Your book's up on my shelf there, Mikey. I may have to grab it here in a minute, but we've got a wonderful program about one of the special launches of the entire shuttle era, the maiden flight of Discovery, 41D. That mission was on August 30th. It launches, 1984, one of our 9 shuttles of the month of August. And Mikey's here every month to feature one of those shuttle missions and the payload. And we're looking at Maynette, may join us occasionally too. On our green screen, we're looking, what are we looking at there, Maynette?
That is the solar array flight experiment, which flew as part of OST-1 on STS-41D.
So in 1984, boy, that is what, 38 years ago. This is what's happening on the International Space Station right now.
Yeah, this was the pathfinder for those same type of solar arrays.
Wow. And you guys had, they're going to tell us about their involvement with that. And that's why you're here to stay curious, because for over 2 years, my co-producer Marty Winkle behind our Streamlabs computer program and myself have been providing this Stay Curious program to bring you space workers, an occasional astronaut, but showcase space history like no one else does, as well as brag about the tremendous 30-year legacy of the shuttle program that you guys were a big part of, and touches our lives every day, doesn't it, Mikey?
Oh, yes, sir. Yep. A lot of things that happened back then, just to see ramifications from what happened back then and still happening today. Yes, sir.
And that's what's amazing is the NASA technology. You don't even understand if you're under 30 years old how almost everything you touch is now a direct result of our program, right, Maynette?
That's very true.
Can you think of anything that comes to mind that you worked with that is an everyday item today?
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I'll do that a lot.
Well, I think
we have no script here,
Yeah, no.
so that's why I'll do that a lot.
But I think the biggest one is really what you see behind me. Is this is something that has not only been used for space station, but the whole idea of flexible solar arrays have been adopted for lots of different payloads that are flying.
And it's even gotten better with technology. They actually replaced the solar panels on the International Space Station with smaller and more efficient ones.
Yeah.
As we come down there. So, well, we're going to have a great little program here for you today talking about 41D. We want to first kick off a little bit of our Stay Curious program with some astronaut birthdays. And you guys have dealt with astronauts, so we're going to talk about a few of them on 41D here in a minute. But we've got 4 astronauts born on this date, April 24th, okay? And here they are in a big meme I put together. Celebrating birthdays today are Dick Richards, who's 76 years old, in the upper left there, 4 space flights. Anna Fisher, over there on the right, she is 73 years old, the first mother to fly to space, one of the first original 6 astronauts. That was pretty bold, wasn't it? Wow. A mom going to space. Mm-hmm. And Steve Lindsay, 62 years old, and Mary Ellen Weber, 60. I wanted to mention where they were born. Richard Richards was born in Key West, Florida, but grew up in St. Louis. Dr. Fisher was born Anna Lee Tingle. That's a good trivia question for space lovers. She was born August 24th, 1949 in New York City, but considers San Pedro, California to be her hometown. Steve Lindsay was born in Arcadia, California in 1960. And behind our group here is the pretty Mary Ellen Weber. She was born in Cleveland, Ohio. One of the couple dozen Ohio knots that are born in my native state of Ohio. She was raised in Bedford Heights, which is just a fancy suburb of Cleveland up there. So we wish them all a great birthday. Why do we celebrate their birthdays, Maynette?
Well, because they're a huge part of our history, our space history.
That's right, and they're in our communities every day doing things to inspire that next generation and tell their story. Over 300 shuttle astronauts out there, and you can see a few of them at Kennedy Visitors Complex, where we had an interview this week with Mr. Nick Thomas, and out there this week is Jack Lausma is out there this week. And so if you're going to be here for the space launch of SLS launch, you know, Jack Lausma is out there, Skylab astronaut in STS-3. And, you know, he's 84 years old, so you want to get him while you can out there. So we'll also talk just a minute here in space history on this date. In 1960, 61 years ago, Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge was chosen as the place to launch our moon rocket. And there's the VAB going up. You don't see that picture very often. Merritt Island was chosen by over Cape Canaveral, where they were actually thinking about building it further south on the Cape. The Bahamas had a launch site under consideration. Cumberland, Georgia, over on the coast, was in the works, as was Brownsville, Texas. And Christmas Island, Hawaii, and White Sands were all in the running to be America's spaceport, and it ended up on Merritt Island, basically because they could dump those first stage and second stages easily in the Atlantic Ocean. And they were also looking at the Nova class beyond Saturn V to go to Mars. And so amazing, and to look at that under construction in the early 1960s, and then what we have going on today. Another shot here, of course. How excited you guys to watch this SLS Artemis rocket?
Oh, it's going to be huge. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. Good. You got a lot of calls from family and friends wanting to bunk overnight or stuff like that.
A lot of people coming in from out of town.
Oh, yeah. Huge crowds.
Yeah, we're expecting over 150,000 people in Titusville. And here is a map. The red, you see Titusville up there. Marty, you might use your arrow there to show them that this is the official NASA map of where to see the launch. And there's pad 39B. And you see across the river, that's the Max Brewer Bridge, and that whole red area is where we'll have just thousands of people watching it. And then behind Mikey, there is the NASA Causeway over by Cocoa, 520. You don't have to do that, Mikey. 520, and that's actually 528. I'm sorry, 528 would be that route over on South Merritt Island. So it's going to be wild and fun. The American Space Museum is usually closed on Sunday. We're going to open it up because there's going to be so many people downtown, and we want these rocket hobos, as we call them. And there's the official patch, rocket hobo patch there, okay, from Ozzy Osbourne. These rocket hobos are going to be everywhere.
Yes, they are.
And so I don't know. There's not many north-south roads on the coast here. So I may end up here at the museum at like 4 a.m. So you're not cutting traffic, because it's going to be gridlock probably around 5, 6 in the morning for that 8:30 opening of the launch window. It's a 2-hour launch window. So plenty of time to get it up, and all systems are go, and all of the pre-launch meetings and so forth. So we're all looking forward to it. We hope it goes off safely and paves our way to the moon with this unmanned Orion spacecraft. So,
Great.
Well, let's get into what we're here to talk to these engineers about, the shuttles of August. There's 9 shuttles of August. The one right behind you there, Mikey, is the STS-41D. Yeah.
Yep.
And here's the launch of that, taken by Tom Usiak. The Usiak brothers, Mark and Tom, will be here Friday for the launch, and we'll talk about the abort of the first abort of those 3 SSME engines happened with 41D in 1984, Not sure when the launch of the Abort was, but as we're looking at that, Mikey and Maynette, you have memories of that.
Yep.
Tell us about that, Mikey.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could get into some of these other things. I could kind of talk about what happened. It was a very interesting day. I was in the firing room for 41D when they had the Abort.
Marty was too.
Yeah, yeah. So in fact, I'll, as we get on here, get some of the pictures kind of show the console we were sitting at and stuff.
Okay, good.
So if we want to go ahead and start with the images, we can probably get right into it, because what it is, we can kind of talk about. That's the
We hadn't had a big pre-production meeting. Mikey sends me pictures well in advance, and we really, in the future, we'll go over them a little more. But here's the patch.
That's the mission
of
patch,
41D, and we love talking about the official insignias because they featured Discovery, NASA's third orbital vehicle, making its maiden voyage. That's why you have the ghost ship in the background representing the orbiter's namesakes that have figured prominently in the history of exploration, particularly the European boats. Discovery made some major contributions to understanding the world from the surface. And Discovery, the most flown of all the shuttles, as I consult my shuttle scroll, 39 flights. And Discovery Orbital Vehicle Tail number 103 is kind of known as the pioneering one of the fleet. It launched the Hubble telescope and 2 upgrades, and returned to flight on both occasions. People love Discovery. It heads for the new horizon to extend the proud tradition. And then this is the 11th mission with the astronauts around there, and you guys will talk about them. Henry Hartsfield, Michael Coates. Henry has passed away, I believe. Judy Resnick, of course. This was her only flight, and people forget that she did fly in space before the Challenger disaster. Stephen Hawley and Rick Mullane, and
Mike Mullane.
Mike Mullane on there, and they've got the wrong payload specialist written here. It wasn't Charlie Walker. I can consult the scroll and tell you real quick who that was, but let's get to you guys' part and tell us. These missions not only have an insignia patch, but a lot of the payloads have their own patches. So, Mikey, take it away there.
Okay, this is actually one Maynette sent, so she still had this.
Yeah, well, it's the OST one, which is the one NASA payload on this flight. There were several commercial satellites that also flew on what became 41D after, and Mikey, you can talk about the remanifesting. Okay. But it stands for Office of Aerospace and Science Technology 1, and consisted of 2 main payloads, which is the Solar Array Flight Experiment, which you saw a picture of before, and the Dynamic Augmentation Experiment, thank you, which measured the movement and flexion of the solar array during its deployment and operation.
Here is our crew. We love showing our crew in space there. You're going to talk, we'll speak of Judy Resnick here a little bit. We have another picture of her, but you said you worked with her.
I did. She was the mission specialist for OST-1. And so she actually, I first met her, Lockheed Martin Sunnyvale, or actually it was Lockheed Missiles and Space Company, Sunnyvale, was developed the Solar Array Flight Experiment, and it was managed by the Marshall Space Flight Center. And went out to Sunnyvale to see them deploy it in the ground test fixture. And Judy Resnick was there, got to meet her. Ended up, we talked a lot because she came down for all the test activities, the level 4 testing that we did of the Solar Array Flight Experiment. And yeah, I was a fresh out engineer in June of '83, and we were testing the payload in like March of April of '84. And she would call me up like I knew everything. And I felt kind of odd because here's this astronaut calling me, asking me about stuff. But she was wonderful, very caring, very technically, born Akron, Ohio.
Very
she
smart
was
lady.
Very smart lady. She did research at the National Institutes of Health. I believe she was a biomedical engineer. And just very, she was very
So she's very inquisitive.
She's
and
very
hands-on
inquisitive, very
everything, huh?
hands-on, and really embraced everybody around her and as a teammate.
Now,
So
Maynette, you were telling me you got mistaken
yeah.
for her.
When I was at Lockheed Sunnyvale, at the time I had longer hair and bangs, kind of like Judy Resnick did, and I was walking around waiting for the testing to start, and somebody walked up to me and said, "Are you Judy Resnick?" And I'm like, "Oh wow, I wish I were." But so yeah, I was very flattered.
Well, she's awesome. We talk about her every chance we get.
Yes.
She aced her entrance exam, SATs, the sixth woman in the history of that exam to get a perfect score.
That's something.
And she was going to be a concert pianist at school of Juilliard wanted her. She ended up going to Carnegie Mellon, which is the top engineering college,
Great
right?
engineering
She's
skills.
very sharp.
And so very sharp, and we always love talking about her. But we're going to talk. Let you guys talk as we go through our list of
Okay.
images here. So
Okay.
you guys go back and forth there the way you wish.
Okay, well, this one basically is a double image. What it shows is the first attempt. This is what the one on the left was what 41D looked like when they had the abort. So it was a different payload than what actually flew. And so what you see on the left is kind of what it was that day that we actually had the abort. And one of the things to note, of course, is OST-1 in there. And then the one just in front, it was large format camera, and that was basically the payload I worked on, and that's why I was in the firing room that day for the abort. And then down at the bottom, it's kind of hard to read, but basically what happens is when we had the abort, they had to come off the pad, and they remanifested. They combined a couple missions together, and what you see on the right is actually the 41D payload that flew. And of course, one of the things you see in there is large format camera's not there. That flew on 41G, which is what we're going to talk about, hopefully in October.
Pardon me, my ignorance, but what was the time frame from the abort to the actual launch? Like 3 months? Or?
The abort was on the 26th of June,
Okay.
and so then it was,
July.
Launched in end of August.
and then so
yeah.
about 2 month delay, before we launched.
So it was
in
the thing. That's a lot of change in paperwork
Yes.
and people's hearts being broke, maybe that
Yeah.
their payload wasn't flying,
Yeah.
right?
Got remanifested, different flights. So yeah, it was.
1984, the 11th flight of the shuttle.
Yeah.
What kind of politics was going on there?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because it felt bad for the people. Some of their missions got canceled. Like the 41F got canceled, 41E got canceled, and those missions were combined on the 41D and 41G. So all the people are kind of scrambling. Are we going to fly in space? What's going to happen? So that was what I wanted to show. Was kind of
Okay.
it was two different missions. Okay, now this is what this shows. Is the firing room, and in the foreground there is actually the payload console. That's kind of where we would sit. It's called the C1 console. That's where we sat for the launches. Anybody
Right
with
there
the payload?
behind where we are.
Yeah, right behind my head there. And then actually give you some orientation. The pad is off to the left there. Those are the large windows you see. Those are the windows that face towards the pad. So
Right.
that's kind of facing the pad. And this is where, of course, we would sit for launch. And this is, of course, where I was sitting. Is actually third seat from the right there, for 41D, the abort. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea where we kind of sat in the firing room. That was basically our place for every launch. The C1 console sat there for every flight, and that's where we would sit. That's where anybody for payload ops would sit.
We had the C5 console that fueled the shuttle in our shuttle gallery.
Yeah.
And Marty, you were what, C12 in the back?
It was,
Back in there.
C3 and C4 fueled it.
Okay. We'll have to change that tag out there.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so the next
but what was that? We're going to talk to the USIAC brothers who were there and took photos of that abort. I mean, what's a big pucker factor, I'm sure, going on
Oh,
in that
wow,
room
yeah.
at the time.
Well, yeah. In fact, I think it's in. Is it the next one?
Okay.
We talk about the aborts. Yeah. So kind of what happened was we counted down to 6 seconds, and waiting for it to go, and then all of a sudden you hear a cutoff, and those engines came to a screeching halt, and it was literally fingers on a chalkboard. It was a sound I'll never ever forget when those engines shut down at the
3
pad.
miles away, you could
3
hear it.
miles away you can hear it. And there's actually only 2 engines started. One never started. 3 and 2 started. One never did start. And kind of what happened was those came to a screeching halt. Okay, we have everything's clear. The engines are shut down. Well, if you go through the transcript, the ground launch sequencers evidently showed that engine 1 was still running. On board, the orbiters people, the commander said they never got a start. The indication inside that was one never started. But so bottom line is they shut down, and the reason was engine 3 had a problem. So one of the valves was opening too slow, so the computer shut everything down. but it was a pucker factor. Okay, here, and this is my first time I was in the firing room for a launch. I was in the firing room before that for testing and all, but this was my first mission on console for the actual launch. So it was pucker factor, and on the console you got the displays and you got the computer, and then you got monitors, so you can punch up any camera you want to see what the different locations on the pad. The monitor showing the systems and stuff. And for payloads, sometimes payloads be very active during ascent or during launch. Some were passive. This one was kind of passive, so we just kind of sat there. Other payloads were a lot more active. We just kind of sat there. Well, of course, main engine shut down. Everything's still okay. Next thing was, we have indication of a fire. There's a fire at the pad. And everybody, so I started punching up cameras to try to get different camera views of the pad. And there's a fire at the pad. And then you see the water deluge turn on at the bottom of it. And I really thought something really bad was about to happen. So we just sat back, and of course the professionals all talking between the orbiter and ground systems and indication of the fire. And so kind of what happens is when you have something like that, you have what's called mode egresses. And mode 1, which was basically the crew has to get out of it themselves. That's what that chart showed, was kind of different modes. Well, the commander said, no, we have a fire, and it's a hydrogen fire. Of course, any hydrogen fire burns clear. You can't see it. Okay, and so the commander says, well, we can be walking out of the orbiter and walk right into a blowtorch, basically. And so he made the call to stay in the shuttle. We're not going to do mode 1 egress. We're going to stay in there until everything's safe and the fire's out. And kind of what this shows is what happens if they do have to get out. And this is the escape basket. Basically, you have the shuttle, the tower, and then the cables going down to the right there. They basically get in a basket, and they go down into an area. They stop, and there's either a bunker they could jump into for protection, or an M113, old tanks, that they would then drive away. And here's a picture of what the baskets look like actually up in the pad. And you notice the grading there is yellow. Well, why is it painted yellow? When that water's going off, they can't see anything. And so basically what they'll do is they'll be looking down, and they'll follow that yellow path to the baskets, because all this will be covered in water.
Misting from up at the top there coming down. Not misting, I'm sure.
It's like a waterfall. Yeah. It's a deluge. And so this is kind of a picture of what those baskets look like. And here's a picture of Crip and John Young, STS-1, doing some. And what they would do, they practiced where they have basically a big chain, but there was a cable. They'd punch this lever, and it'd cut this wire, and they'd go. Well, of course, they didn't want to do that, so they had a chain that stopped them. Well, one of the things on 41D was they'd never had a human ride those baskets. Okay? So when it came time to do mode 1 egress, and then the crew basically ride those baskets, they says, well, we've never had a human ride it before. Okay?
Right. Charlie Bolden was one of the first ones.
And so Charlie Bolden was the first one as a human to ride that. That's what came out of 41D, was we need to have a human ride that basket so we can be confident in its use. So I just wanted to show the picture of Crip and kind of what it looked like. All right.
Yeah, and we've Travis Thompson, closeout crew leads, talked about that too.
Yep.
And I love the expression on John's face here as Crip's making fun of him, because a couple people told me John wasn't real keen about heights, and he was, and of course he's almost 50 years old or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his last flights there.
Well, you wouldn't believe how many astronauts are afraid of heights.
Yeah.
You're an astronaut, but you're afraid of height. How does that happen? It does. A lot of them are.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a great picture there.
Okay, so then leading in, this is kind of what Maynette was talking about earlier.
Yeah, this is a view at Lockheed Sunnyvale of the solar array flight experiment and its zero-G test fixture. The array itself, you could not deploy in 1G unless you had it in the zero-G test fixture, because it wouldn't support its own weight. So this was an opportunity to see it actually tested and deployed all the way out. When we tested it at KSC, we could only deploy the mast out about 12 inches. And we were very careful about that because we didn't want it to and do any kind of damage to the mast itself.
We're going to see a picture of this Maynette deployed from Discovery, and look at the size of folks out there with the technician at the end.
Yeah, it was about 102 feet fully deployed.
Okay.
About 13 feet wide. And when it was retracted and stowed, the box it was in was only about 7 inches thick.
Interesting. That's why we're looking at this picture here of the accordion coming out.
Yeah, so you can see it had a coilable mast, which came out of a container, and that drove the deployment of the the blanket itself.
Mhm.
And if you've ever seen The Dream is Alive, this
Mhm.
is featured in it,
Okay.
and it's got a great view of it deploying.
This is Stay Curious. Who has not seen The Dream is Alive?
Well, yeah.
VHS tape.
I
from the
know. I
beginning,
want to get it
okay?
remastered or something.
Yeah, yeah. That was the first IMAX theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the big
image
ones.
of
Yeah,
the
that was
shuttle in
huge. Yep.
there. So this was deployed. We'll see it here. in-
Well,
in
yeah,
a
I
few
think the
minutes.
next one's actually talk about show some of the testing that Maynette and the group did. Okay, this is the
Yeah,
crew.
this is also at Lockheed
Yeah.
Sunnyvale. When the crew came, as Judy Resnick, of course, in the middle, and Hank Hartsfield on the left, and Mike Coates on the right, that were looking at the test activities and looking at the array itself. The array pretty much was dummy solar cells, with the exception of about 2 at the very top. So it was really just they were testing the structure.
The accordion.
yeah,
thing
and
in
the
there. That's what I was
dynamics
gonna
of-
ask, was actually hooked up to get any voltage out of
They
it.
they had like 2 cells up at the very
Okay.
top that they tested. And this is a view in the operations and checkout building in the level 4 test area. And that is the integrated OST 1. You can see in that gold box there is the where the mast is stowed. Behind it is where the blanket is stowed, that larger structure up top. And out in front of it, you can see there's a structural member that's sitting out front of it that has the dynamic augmentation experiment, which was actually a modified star tracker
Marty, could you circle that? I think it's that canister looking thing on the front.
in
there,
the
center
very
right.
front,
Yeah.
a little bit over. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's
Thank you,
the
Marty.
dynamic augmentation experiment, and that was the laser system they used to measure the movement and the flexion of the solar array as it was
And the
being
gold
deployed.
behind us is solar array.
Yeah,
And-
that's the mast, and then the blanket box is behind it.
Now you had to fire up that laser, right? Did they let you fire up that laser or no?
Trying to remember, we did, but we had all kinds of controls
Yeah.
in place for it.
So to do that testing required a massive amount of coordination to be able to just turn that laser on
Huh.
and do the test.
Mikey, we talked about that structure as sort of a mainframe situation in the payload bay for many missions, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of a reusable structure.
Yeah,
the
that's
MPES.
that structure, the bridge structure is called an MPES,
Yeah. Okay.
or a mission peculiar experiment support structure.
In fact, if you look real quick and look behind that, you'll see kind of in the faded, there's like a cylinder behind that. That's actually a large format camera.
Yeah.
And what we did is we actually positioned these as they would be in the shuttle. So you do one crane lift, you pull them out of here, payload in the payload canister, take the canister to the shuttle. So these are basically in the orientation that they would go in the shuttle.
There's a close.
And there's a close up.
Yeah, that's a close-up
Just a good
of
shot.
the mast being deployed. And as I mentioned, because of the constraints in 1G, we would only deploy it out about 12 inches, and we had people in place to cut power. For some reason, the command to stop it didn't stop it. But so that showed it in its fully, as far as we could deploy it, there in a 1G environment.
Speak to the fact that lots of us space lovers out there don't take into consideration that we're here on the Earth with 1G. All this stuff is made to work in 0G. So like you said, you can't always deploy it on one gravity. Just like Marty's lunar module that he worked on for Grumman, no one could ever go up and down the ladder on the lunar leg on Earth because they would break it. It was designed for 1/6 gravity. So speak to that a little bit. That's part of your engineering background, is figuring that out.
Yeah, no, from a mechanical standpoint, yeah, we would have to have counterweights depending on the payload to make it think it was in 0G. Things like this where you could only deploy it partially. So that was the way kind of we worked around it. Some things we couldn't do it at all. Some things we could not do until we actually got on orbit. So we would test that the systems worked and the commanding and all that would work. But would the command actually make things move? Some of that we couldn't test until we actually got on orbit. So it was payload dependent on what we could do on the ground, how we could use counterweights. Hey, can we put a sling on this and kind of tension it to make it think it was in 0G? So there's different techniques we could use to try to make it think it was in 0G, so it basically wouldn't damage itself. Yeah.
Yeah,
I find that fascinating always when we talk about these things, and that you're going to space. You can't design everything here to work on Earth. It has to work in a different environment.
Yeah.
up there.
Yep.
We've got next here.
This is a great shot.
This
If you see if I can get out of the way.
We'll kind of both move out of the way. That down at the bottom where Mikey is, that's me down there with a bunch of people standing around me.
You're on the keyboard. She's on the keyboard.
I'm on the keyboard. We were the checkout system we used to test OST-1 was called the most aptly named acronym ever, called the Payload Integration Test Set, or PITS, and it was the PITS. It was a very primitive setup. We ended up, as we got more complex partial payloads like OST-1, like tethered satellite and all those farther on, we actually developed a follow-on. There was a follow-on checkout system called the partial payload checkout unit that we used. But for these first flights, we used the payload integration test set. And that's a picture of us doing some troubleshooting during the solar array testing, and I couldn't tell you exactly what we were troubleshooting at the time, but we had a couple of things we had to figure out. Anytime you have an interface control document that tells how the shuttle should work and how the payload should work and how they should be working between each other, but sometimes there's room for interpretation, and that's the reason we test, is to
integrating these systems.
Yes, and making sure they, sometimes they have timing issues, sometimes there's grounding issues, sometimes there's mechanical mating issues. So this is the reason we do, testing as we go.
So are those computers beside you there? Is
Yes.
that a gigantic Burroughs computer or something that would now fit in our pockets?
It was a mini computer. Yeah, it would probably fit in our pocket.
And behind you too, the gray behind you.
Yeah, well, those were actually, I think, more power racks, and they weren't actually directly involved with some of those were for the payload checkout unit, which did some of the space lab.
So you
testing.
space workers, and we have a lot watching our show. What building are we in here?
We are in the operations checkout building. In
OMC,
fact,
okay.
if behind me is the ATM clean room, so the Apollo telescope mount clean room. So you can see that the door behind and the railing above is all part of the ATM clean room.
Yeah, this is the west part of the ONC,
Yeah.
again, level 4 area. Horizontal processing. Again, most
Yes.
of our payloads we process in horizontal orientation. This is in that same building, yeah.
Okay.
We did that.
And though they're going to be vertical on the pad, and we've had several great programs with Mikey already. Go check them out. The one where you had to put the animals on Space Lab 1 and figure all that out is an amazing story there. But Maynette, we have regular viewers on here we'd love to shout out to, like Larry Pushker is watching up in Michigan, and Tom Usiak is going to be on our show. He and his little brother are going to get in the car and come down here for the launch. Why don't you say hi to a couple of our friends?
Okay. Hi to Cynthia Rossi and Robert Law.
He's in Dundee, Scotland.
Oh, very cool.
Wow, that's awesome. Welcome.
Carlton Bailey.
Carlton's birthday was yesterday. He's
Happy
a
birthday.
Happy birthday,
photographer. He was
Carlton.
on here.
Keith Sowell.
Thank you.
Gary Gerio.
Dave Stangy.
Stangy.
Yeah, Dave Stangy
Okay.
up there. Him and Larry Pushker are good friends up there.
And Spartan 117.
Good.
Alfred Wessels.
Good one.
Christopher Mick. Do you want to say
No,
something?
I can't pronounce names, man.
Oh.
They're doing a great job. Go for
He's
it.
an educator in Wisconsin
Oh, hey,
at
Chris.
Madison, and he's a NASA ambassador even, I think.
This is great. Thanks everybody
very
for
cool.
watching.
Mike
yeah.
Bostix, thank you.
Thank
a lot
you.
of new names
Yeah.
Marty's
Oh,
writing
very
down.
cool.
This is awesome.
Melissa Pope.
Hi, Melissa.
Tom Celentano.
Yep.
Longia Sani. I
Good enough for
apologize if I pronounced it wrong. And Neil
10:30.
1030.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Hey,
you all,
Neil.
everybody, for
Thank you
watching.
all.
This is awesome.
This is
A lot of
great.
people. This is great. Thank you.
Once in a while, one of your friends pop up there. But,
Yeah.
stay curious. So here we are in space with
Mm-hmm.
Discovery's maiden voyage. Always an exciting thing, a maiden shakedown flight.
Oh my
of the
gosh,
show.
yes.
Yep.
So you can see OST-1 in the foreground with the solar array is retracted and stowed in its blanket box. And you can see behind it are the commercial satellites they were launching on that mission. I think a lot of the reason for the remanifesting is at the time, before Challenger, we were launching a lot of commercial satellites on Shuttle, and so they had some satellites that were waiting in the wings, so they remanifested the commercial satellites on this flight.
To make money, after
Yeah.
all, we were thinking this was going to be a space truck. NASA was so arrogant about the shuttle program. They said, forget your single stick rockets. Everybody's going to want to get in line and have their payloads launched on the shuttle. And after 24 successful missions, they found out that it's a little more complicated to
Yes, sir.
turn a buck on what they were trying to do there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Definitely.
so then here's your payload.
And here's the picture you've seen before. This is courtesy of The Dream is Alive. It's showing the deployment of the solar array, and you can see those dots on the array itself. Those are the reflectors that the dynamic augmentation experiment used to measure the movement and flexion of the solar array.
So explain that again, that they just didn't roll this thing out and take a bunch of pretty pictures.
Now, they actually were doing measurements using the dynamic augmentation experiment,
A laser,
which
right.
is a laser laser system, and see all those. They had about 23 of those reflectors, and that's how they would measure the movement and flexion of the solar array, both during deployment and when it was fully deployed.
What's that data look like back on Earth, Mikey and Maynette?
I don't know. I wasn't on council for that, but I'm sure basically it's a lot of data they have to crunch in and probably analyze after the flight.
Yeah.
But I know visually they were saying that it was very stiff
Very
when
yeah.
they noticed that when it was fully deployed that it was pretty rock solid.
Motors. And
Bless you.
does this work like a Venetian blind with
Okay.
cords through it that opened and lowered it there, Maynette?
It's they were tied to the mast, and the mast kind of drove that whole thing. So and they had a solid piece up at the top, which helped, the top of the
So it's
box.
kind of like it pulled the solar
Yeah,
out from
pulled the
top. As
solar
the
out.
mass went up, it pulled
And
it out.
they wanted to make sure it didn't stick together. There was a number of things published afterwards. I've actually got some of the papers that talked about the data they got from this and how they can apply it.
But this is the bedrock data from where they applied to build the International Space Station.
It's that and a number of other flexible arrays that were developed.
Good.
And I think
Because they would use this sometimes in the payload to generate power for your instruments. Was that ever done?
They can use it for instruments. They can use it for satellites. Whatever needed solar power. And you wanted to have something basically that was in a small package that then could be deployed later to get you the
And
power.
lightweight.
And lightweight, very lightweight.
So in 1984, this was
In 1984.
the pioneering technology.
That started it all.
And I'm sitting here thinking about how this technology is now on top of homes and roofs around here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the solar arrays and the efficiency of the solar arrays.
Yeah, they're improving those all the time.
Absolutely. I know several people that got on board.
Well, Orion itself, which is flying to the moon, will have solar arrays and power.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Orion flying to the moon.
And then the last chart I want to show. This is kind of, I'm not going to hopefully embarrass Maynette here, but she has been, we've talked about Maynette a number of times. She was the one that kind of helped me very much with the book. A lot of the information, the people that I was able to interview with the book for the book, Maynette was able to. What she did is she kept an email list. People retire, go off literally all over the world. We would stay in contact with them. Maynette maintained that list, so we send out one email, and it goes to 300 plus people. So that helped basically with the book. Maynette was instrumental in our Astro Restoration project. She created the website, and she maintains the website for our Astro Restoration project. She also developed this site and maintains this site. This is kind of a follow-on to the book. And what we do with this site is anybody who works Space Lab, we would like them to go to this site, and it's down at the bottom. It's kind of the website.
Space Lab.
The payload and the PS. Space Lab, payload and
people.
What we want to do here, we want to try to get people's brains. The people who work Space Lab, we want to document that, have it recorded so other people can come to the same site and read about it. Okay, and Maynette maintains that. It's an awesome site.
Wow.
So she's our multimedia expert. It's electrical engineer, test out solar arrays, but she's also very good at multimedia. So that's why I wanted to show this. This is kind of the last slide to kind of say, hey, well, this is a follow-on. And so anybody out there who works Space Lab, please go to the site. Give us information, and the people that want to learn about Space Lab and the payload people and the people that worked it could go to the same site and read about it. So I just wanted to bring that. That's our last slide.
Well, I'll promote that on our Facebook and our 10,000 followers on there,
Excellent.
Maynette.
Thank you.
Pick up some of your friends on there. Your book is very interesting. It's not like a book that I've read cover to cover. I pick it up and kind of start reading a chapter, and you got personal stories in there about some of the astronauts and stuff. It's a good read. It's called Space Lab Payloads. You can order it on Amazon with your Amazon. What's the Amazon program for your Smile?
Amazon Smile.
Because we're your favorite nonprofit. You can order it on Amazon Smile, and we get some credit out of that. But this should be in a lot of you all's libraries out there. It's not. There's technical things in there that you can understand, and I think it really celebrates it a lot. Your co-writer was
David Slater.
David Slater.
He's from the UK. A very professional writer, had written dozens and dozens of books.
Yeah.
So he was huge, and his brother was actually the editor in pulling off the book. So those, they basically turned, like I say, my gibberish into readable text. And again, the idea was to
technical gibberish and readable text.
Because I basically got the grammar of a third grader. Sorry for third graders, but so they were basically instrumental in making that happen. And again, we wanted to make it to where it was a book. If you're interested in the space program, we wanted to be able to make it readable. We didn't want to put calculus formulas all over the place, so we wanted to try to make it readable for anybody who's interested in the space program. That was the idea. Yep.
Well, I've enjoyed this. Marty, do we have any comments or questions out there?
Nope.
Good. Well, I think people enjoy these payload programs and looking at one little aspect of it. I think it's fascinating about how 1984. That's when all this solar panel stuff we'd use solar panels a lot, on other space probes. But this was the bedrock, so to speak, to build the International Space Station and other projects that we're going to follow in this 30-year legacy of our space shuttle here. So, Maynette, how did you enjoy Stay
I love
Curious
this.
here
This
today?
was great. Thank you for having me.
Well, we can't wait to have you back.
Oh,
all right.
Thank you.
And you're a lot prettier to look at than Mikey. You don't wear a ball cap. And you seem to know
Totally
your stuff
agree.
just like he
Totally
does.
agree.
Who's Mikey out here? No, we love Mikey. This is a great fit for our American Space Museum. Your first time to look around our Space Museum a little bit in this configuration here on this is the 6th location it's been in.
It's
And
beautiful.
they've been in malls and so forth. So your impression is?
It's phenomenal. I encourage everybody to come and visit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to see a lot of the history of the space program from the early days to now.
Yes.
This museum has it. It's awesome what you've done here, Mark, and your team.
Well, not me. Karan Conklin is our executive director. I've just sort of been a little bit of the straw that stirs the swizzle stick that stirs the drink once in a while. But it's so important that we've attracted people like Mikey Haddad here and Maynette Smith that embrace our museum. You guys get what we're about. We don't want to be the biggest or the best. We want to celebrate space workers like nobody else has. And to know you all, and Marty over there, I say it all the time, you are national treasures. The country doesn't realize what you all did for our nation. And there's a lot of Department of Defense missions, too, that brought down the Iron Curtain that were on the shuttle. And that's what we love, celebrating the space workers here in what we call a delivery room of America's space age, Brevard County. So,
Absolutely.
Maynette, something you'd like to say before we leave you?
Just everybody keep tuning in to stay curious and learn some fantastic stuff. I learn new stuff every time I watch.
We appreciate that. Mikey?
I totally agree. Totally agree. It's like you got to very interesting program here. Brings up a lot of information that people don't know about. You could put out there for people to see, Mark. So very well done on your Stay Curious segment.
Well, appreciate
That's
that.
awesome.
It's truly a labor of love, and we couldn't do it without great people like you wanting to be involved. We have Mr. Hugh Harris, has been a little bit under the weather, the voice of NASA. So he didn't appear in August, but we've talked to him. He's feeling better, and he'll be here in September. We got Terry White, known for his famous little handlebar mustache.
Mm-hmm.
He's we're doing the orbital processing, the garage, shuttle garage with Terry once a
Okay.
month.
Mm-hmm.
And Triple T, Tales from the White Room. We were having him about once a week, but we're gonna cut back a little bit once a month because of his job, and just we run out of Tales from the White Room that he can tell. Okay, there's a lot
Yeah,
that
they
he can't
can't
tell on there, and
That's true.
and then we picked up a wonderful Nick Thomas, who's the chief communicator at Kennedy Visitors Complex, is going to be on a frequent basis. And who am I leaving out, Marty? That is in our
That's it.
regular.
I think that's it.
Okay, so and adding more people every day, and people like you, Maynette. Mikey brought J.D. Bartow, astronaut. That was just. He was awesome. He was very entertaining. Very liked our museum a lot. He lives on Merritt Island, so we're hoping to see more of J.D. Bartow. So, Marty, thank you for a great Streamlabs program today. Tomorrow is Thursday. We're going to talk about the Artemis is growing. The publicity for it. We've got 2 German TV crews in here to talk to some Apollo era people tomorrow, and I'm going to continue with the shuttles of August, and we will talk more about the Artemis launch, some logistics to help y'all who are coming here. We are going to be open Sunday. We open Saturday and a special day Sunday for all of you here on the Space Coast to come visit us. And so until then, I'm Mark Marquette saying thank you for watching, stay curious, and bridging the space between us.